Hello, friends. It is me. It's MG in another episode of the Reimagine You Lab podcast. It is yet another week and has passed. And can you believe it? We are marching our way through the end of the year. I can't believe it. It is the fourth quarter. 2024 is almost over. I can't hardly believe it. But, you know, it is what it is. And so I thank you for tuning in. And you know that each week you are always in for a treat. And today is no different. But before we jump in, I want to make sure that I tell you, thank you for subscribing to the podcast. We have hit our 11,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. Woo-hoo! And we are doing it, you guys. I can't believe it. This is amazing. And so I want to just thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button so that every time a new episode drops every Friday, you will get the notification. And if you haven't already, invite a friend, a family member, a colleague, a coworker. Invite them all to join you when you tune in, because I told you it's always a treat every Friday. Fun Fridays, Friday, whatever. Just know it's always going to be something good. And so I want you to know, I want to introduce you to an amazing young lady who is with me today in the lab. And you know, we call this the lab because we are always trying something new. We're learning something new. Our perspective gets changed when we reimagine you and who you could be, should be, want to be, think you can be. We want you to be your best. So today we are dealing with this topic. Listen, y'all ready? I want y'all to really be ready. So, Gabby, I do not want to tell them who you are, because guess what? Why am I not going to tell them who you are, Gabby?
Because I'm going to tell them who I am.
Yes, y'all know what we do. We go beyond the bio. So this is the time when I say I've got an amazing guest who is in the lab with me, and she is beyond the bio. Gabby, I'm turning it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you for having me. My name is Gabby Winek, and I am a licensed clinical social worker. I have been in practice for the last 8 years, and I'm also a chronic stress and anxiety coach as well. I help women through burnout, chronic stress, and anxiety, having been through it myself. So I really want to share my story and help women and men, anyone who is really going through burnout, chronic stress, so that we can prevent people from having chronic pain, migraines, fibromyalgia, you name it. I want to help prevent these chronic conditions from happening because of chronic stress and anxiety and the demands that we have on our life through work, relationships, finances, parenting. I mean, you name it, we can get chronically stressed and burnt out in all of these different areas. So I am so grateful to be here and talk about this topic today.
Yay! I'm glad that you are here, because nobody gets stressed or burnt out. No, nobody gets stressed.
Nobody.
Like we do this work. We do lots of work, and we can just do it completely every day, all day, because we don't have to get ready. We stay ready, right? Like that's how we roll.
Right. You know, humans were made to be chronically stressed all day, every day, right?
Or so we think.
We think, exactly.
So, you know what, Gabby? So thinking about that, though, you know what? You are a licensed clinical social worker. So talk to me a little bit about how you got started, and you know what took you down the clinical social worker path. Has that you must have been a helper your whole life?
I was chronically anxious my entire life, and since I was a child. Yeah, but I went into college actually as a secondary education and biology major.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. I come from a long line of family of teachers. My mom's a teacher, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, aunts, like a whole line of teachers. I was like, oh, I want to teach. And I was like, I took bio, I was good at it. I'm like, there's no way I'm teaching. Like especially secondary education, like I don't work. There's a reason I don't work with the teenagers. Like they are, for me, difficult. So I'm like, that's not going to work. Right.
Yeah.
And so I took a psychology 101 class with a sports psychologist, and I was like, this is it. Like this,
You
I
got
want to do
it.
psychology. It was the way she taught the class was incredible. And so I declared psychology after that. And then the overachiever that I was, now
Okay.
recovering,
Okay.
I was like, I have all these extra credits. Like I might as well like double major, minor. So I found social work. And of course, the professor was like, if you just do your internship in the summer, you can double major. I'm like, bang for my buck. I'm gonna double major, right?
Double for your trouble. Okay.
Exactly. And then, so I did that, and I wanted to go to Northwestern to do marriage and family therapy. And then I found out the cost of the program at $90,000, and I went,
Is
yeah,
that
no,
it?
yeah, we're not doing that. No. So I went back to my university and basically got my master's in a year, because if you have your bachelor's, it only takes you a year to do your master's in social work. So I did that. And then I started working in community mental health. And this is where my burnout story begins. I,
Okay.
I developed chronic pelvic pain in college,
Mhm.
and then having, chronic anxiety. Like that was part of my story as well. And working in community mental health where clients had very big diagnoses. I mean, we're talking about like schizophrenia, bipolar, personality disorders. Like these were really intense clients. And the pain got so bad that I found a clinic in California, and I went there. And I knew when I came back, I needed to quit because I could not handle what they wanted me to do with like physical therapy, meditation, along with working full time.
Yeah.
So fast forward, this cycle kind of continued until 2 years ago at my last practice where I worked, and I saw 25 to 30 plus clients a week.
How
And
was you doing that?
I don't know, to be honest. I just kind of did. My caseload built up, and I was still in a lot of pain working through it. And there was one moment where I saw a client, and I looked at the client and I went, I don't care what you're talking about. You can leave. Like, go home. Why are you here? And I went, this is not okay. Like, I cannot be reacting to a client like this.
Yeah.
And I knew there was a bigger issue. Like, a couple of days off was not going to solve this issue.
Mhm.
And I did. I
Yeah.
did take a couple of days off. But it really took me months coming home with like 10 plus out of 10 pain every night, and taking Klonopin every single night because that was the only thing that helped me sleep after I saw 8 clients in a day.
Yeah.
And after a couple of months, I went, Gabby, like enough is enough. Like you cannot keep sacrificing your physical and mental health for a job. Like this is not okay.
Yeah.
And I quit because I knew that I was not helping myself or helping clients. I wasn't giving the best service that I
Yeah.
could.
Yeah. You know what? It usually is like a breaking point. Like there's a point in time when it's like, you know what? I'm not able to do this. It's
Right.
unsustainable. I can't do it anymore. You know what? It's interesting though that it took, a little while, and it always does. It takes a little
Yeah.
while, especially to go from kind of like that overachiever side, because gosh, I want to do a lot. I want to be able to do a lot. And we feel really good. Like, I think
Totally.
capes kind of grow out of our backs sometimes, right? Like there's lots of superhero stuff that we like to do. And
Yeah.
then there's something that'll change that perspective and make us say, you know what? No, I don't have to do this.
Right.
And I shouldn't. And so now you're helping other people
Yeah.
figure that out for themselves. So how did you get started down that path, helping others?
Yeah. It really came out of me taking time to like heal myself and to really
Yeah.
do the deep healing work within myself. Like I can report that I'm like 90% better in terms of my pain. But the thing is, I needed to really work on myself in order to create the space and the capacity to start helping clients. Because
Yeah.
if we're not okay, we can't help other people. I know it's
Oh,
cliche.
absolutely.
We talk about it all the time, but it's so true. You can't be burnt out or on the verge of burnout and think that you can help other people. Like you got to fill your own cup first. And it's it's true. And so I
Yeah.
needed to do that intense healing work and take time off before I could feel like I could start helping clients again. And that's what really had me start again, because I
Yeah.
had the space and the capacity for clients and for helping again.
Yeah. No, you know what, I think that's so important because what we do, it can be cliche, but I think
Mhm.
that if we are honest with ourselves and each other, it is true. Like when you're on the airplane and they say, hey, put on your mask first
Yep,
and then help those around you who may need some help, need some
exactly.
assistance.
Mhm.
Um, but we do have to experience the truth about that in order to be able to do it,
Right.
because it is that whole you know syndrome, and I don't know what you call it. You probably know. I'm sure it's in the text, in one of your old textbooks in your psychology classes, where there's something inside that says, oh, I can do this, until I can't.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about, like, now, I just as we're kind of building on this, when you're thinking about, or when you're working with clients, and we'll talk more about it, as you kind of share some of your own path here first, when you are thinking about other people and being able, I'm always thinking about the listeners, those who may be tuning in and kind of thinking about this for themselves. What were those things? I always believe that there are red flags, because most people know, hey, there's some things that are going on. It's a lot that I deal with, and everybody's threshold for pain is different, right?
Correct.
I'm going to say that the threshold for pain is different. Their threshold for and their capacities are different. When you're dealing with or learning clients and things like that, how would somebody be able to identify, hey, maybe I'm getting to a tipping point for me
Yeah.
with anxiety or burnout? What does that begin to look or feel like if I was self
Mhm.
looking, you
Totally.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it is when we're starting to kind of feel that dread. So it's like, oh, I have to go to work again. I have to get up again, right? This kind of like,
Oh,
oh, I
yeah.
don't want to do this, right? This like
Mhm.
sense of it's just dread. Like, I don't want to is a really good warning sign that your nervous system is probably shifting a little bit into a freeze state. So instead of fight or
Okay.
flight, which we normally know as anxiety, so like I need to run or I need to fight a threat, freeze is going to be where we start to conserve energy, right? The
Okay.
body's like, this is too much. I need to shut down in order to survive. And so that sense of
Okay.
dread is really important, like cynicism towards your life, like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. This is getting too much. A lot of
Okay.
fatigue. People like when
Mhm.
you fatigue more than normal. Like, I think we're all
Okay.
tired, but when we're just exhausted mentally and physically is also another huge sign of like what that tipping point.
Okay.
Um, and when we just start to feel stuck, right? Like there's no
Okay.
other option, right? Of like, oh, I have to do this for the rest of my life. Like I don't really have another way out. Is when we kind of start to feel like we're kind of in that tipping point. Those tend to seem to be some of those pivotal kind of symptoms and moments that clients feel.
Okay. All right. So, whoa. All right. So those are, those are things, those are those things that kind of bubble up, like that
Right.
dread. Like I think everybody, on Sunday night is kind of like, oh man, the weekend's over. Like it's kind of like winter's coming up, so that happens. But when it starts to turn into, what'd you call it? Freeze?
Yeah,
not
it's like
fight, flight, but
freeze.
freeze.
It's like a functional freeze because I think a lot of people like still do it, but it doesn't mean that we want to or we're in a good space to do it. And
Mhm.
burnout, chronic stress is different than like the Sunday scaries, right? Like the Sunday scaries is just kind of like, I have to go to work tomorrow. Like I'm kind of nervous. I don't know what the week is gonna bring. That's much different than like oh my gosh, I have work tomorrow. Like those are two different things, right?
Well, I'm glad you distinguished that, because I was just going to ask you, how do you differentiate between the two? But that's helpful. That's
Right.
super helpful. You know what? So, like, I know that, people in corporate workspaces, And I've been there in corporate, and you always know, like, in corporate workspaces, or whether you're an entrepreneur, there's busy, there's a
Yeah.
lot going on there. It always feels like there's more to do with the resources that you have sometimes to work with, so managing anxiety, in your profession, when you opened up and were sharing about your bio, is kind of like, hey, it could be in the workplace, it can be with finances, it could be with family, it could be with kids, it could be whatever, right?
Mhm.
But let's specifically kind of in the workplace, or with small businesses and things like that, especially for high achieving individuals. What are some strategies really that you recommend for people?
Yeah. It's really, for me, what I teach clients is like nervous system regulation. So it's
Okay.
techniques that are going to level out your nervous system, and this happens over time, right? But like
Okay.
taking breaks, right? Because I think a lot of us push until we can't push anymore. It's like, I have to do all these things, I have to do all these things. It's like reminding that part of you that you don't, right? Like, and really talking to that part, that overachieving
Yeah.
part that's like, I have to do all these things. And it's like, hi, come sit next to me. Like, thank you for protecting me. Because all that part wants to do is protect you at the end of the day. It's like, and say thank you for
Mhm.
protecting me, but like, we don't have to do all of these things today. Like, it's gonna be okay if we don't. Like, what are the priorities? Like, everyone knows what their priorities are. And so, like, how do we start to do a couple of those throughout the day? Like, I have to get them done, and then the rest can go to the next day. Right? And
Okay.
really being
Yeah.
able to kind of prioritize and like even delegate also, as
Yeah.
in small businesses. Like, you might not be able to do everything, and your overachiever might not like that. And it's, again, talking to that part of yourself and reassuring that part that you're going to be okay, even if you don't do all the things.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. Because you do kind of have to self-regulate, right?
Right.
Like you have to,
Hmm.
talk to yourself, tell yourself what you need to hear
Yep.
so that you can manage through it. No,
Exactly.
I like that. I think for sure you have to do that. Um, so outside of the workplace, all right. So we at home. Is that what you do at home too? You kind of utilize the same type of things, or would you have another
Totally.
favorite strategy at home?
I mean, I think at home for me, it's more like hobbies, right? So things that give me a little bit more like joy, right? So it's like I love
Yeah.
to crochet, I love to do diamond art, I love to exercise and work out, go outside for walks and things like that. Things,
Okay.
are just going to just give you a little bit of like happiness and joy, that little like dopamine,
Yeah.
hit, right? Things that are just fun. Because I think a lot of us just don't have enough things in our life that are fun, that we enjoy doing.
Mhm.
And those things are also really regulating for the nervous system.
No, that's so good. All right. So now I've got to ask you for those, because when 2020 hit and the world started working virtually,
Yep.
right? Like everybody is at home behind a computer, sedentary, and it's easy to say, you would think, it's easy to say, all right, let's get outside, get a little bit of vitamin D, go out, take a loop around a house, right?
Yeah,
Like just walk around your
right.
house, not even walk around the neighborhood, just around your house, just
Mhm.
go outside, walk to the mailbox and come back.
Yeah.
But it's hard for people to do that because you get so used to just like sitting in your chair
Mhm.
and being at your computer.
Right.
So and I don't know if it does or not. I haven't read any of the statistics. I may have to do that after we get off of the call today. But how do you find yourself? Because I know more people are almost, I remember one of the young ladies saying to me that, and this was, probably very early in 2021, that working from home quickly became living at work. And when I thought about it, I was like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
you're right. Because you just kind of, you just get on the computer and you just do
Right.
things because, oh, I've got 20 minutes or half an hour, and you just find
Mhm.
yourself there and you just do it. How
Yeah.
do you become, so sometimes I think the burnout, and I don't know if this is true for any of your clients, and tell me if it is. I think that's the question that I'm leading to here is, do you find people finding themselves more burnout, more anxious, just because they're so much more attached to work or to working from home, or kind of these virtual and remote experiences whereby it's good because you don't necessarily have to get in your car and drive an hour commute to get to an office anymore. But it's almost like you are not necessarily handcuffed, so to speak, but kind of, because it's here. Do you find that, or do people complain about that, or talk about that at all, or is it all the same?
I haven't really had many clients who talk about that specifically. I have heard people say that it can be harder working from home because there's not as much separation, right? Because when you are going to an office, you are leaving your house, and there is a separation between your house and your work. Versus at home, like, your house is your work, and especially if you don't have, if like your office is in your bedroom, like there's literally no separation from where you sleep. So like, one of my biggest tips would be like, if you can, put your desk in a different room or a different part of the house. So you actually have to like physically walk to a different part of your house versus like being in the same room where you sleep.
Yeah.
And then like, it might have to come down to like creating a timer, like put a timer on your phone. Every hour you have to get up and walk around, up and down the stairs, right? Because and like having and creating a habit of like walking, moving your body, exercising, even if it's stretching in your chair. It can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be like you have to do a 45 to an hour workout. It could just be, I'm going to walk up and down the hallway, up and down the stairs, right? But like sometimes we have to literally build it into our schedule as an alarm, as a reminder, until it becomes more of a habit.
Yeah. It's like you do have to, like, you just have to be very intentional about whatever that thing is.
Yep.
Yeah. You got to be intentional about it. How important is it to recognize and address emotional triggers that lead to burnout? Or are there emotional triggers that lead to burnout? Are there?
There can be, absolutely. I mean, I think these are very individual, right? I think a lot of the times you're going to have a lot of these parts that are coming up, right? So like if you're an overachiever, a perfectionist, right? And also these like societal pressures of go, right? Like I always have to be producing, kind of like we were talking about before we recorded the podcast, this idea of like go, produce until you can't produce anymore, right? You go until you like, the body goes, white flag, we can't do this anymore. And I think that's where chronic symptoms start to develop for people, because we, as a society, we're not taught to rest.
Yeah.
We're not taught to take a break, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, right? Being able to like unplug and recharge. We're not taught to do that in our society. And of course there are, traumas that come into play for people. And again, this is so individual for each person. It's hard to say if there are specific triggers, emotional triggers for burnout, because we're all so different and we have such different life experiences. But like these parts of us definitely play into burnout, especially the perfectionist, the overachiever, and the people pleaser. That's a big one for people. Like I can't say no. I can't say no to this project, right? Because that will upset the other person. That is very, very common for people when they have difficulty creating those boundaries.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I remember my husband and I, we were reading the book. We were listening to the audiobook Boundaries. And he and I both were, I was the oldest in my family and he was the middle child, but we both were those ones that were very responsible, like so we were responsible for others or what have you, because he was the oldest son. And so anyway, and we were very big in the ministry at our church. We were managers in our jobs. So we were responsible for lots of things in lots of areas of our lives. And we were listening to that book. And I remember there was a point in time where we looked at each other in the car and we were like, we don't have any boundaries. It's like we were, we always wanted to make sure that everything was taken care of. Things were buttoned up. People could, could count on us to get things done. We filled gaps. And it was like, we could be called literally what felt like any time of day or night.
Yep.
And it was like, oh my God. I was like, Gabby, had I known your telephone number years ago, boo, I would have been on your client roster because I mean, like the two of us, like,
Yeah.
you don't even realize it.
No, and there's that over responsibility piece that sometimes gets taught or conditioned into us, right? Because of family, because of society, because of all these different places. And then we become responsible, or we feel like we have to be, for all these people, things, places, you name it. And then all of a sudden, we are not able to say no, ever. And then we have 5 million things on our plates, and no wonder we're all stressed and burnt out because we don't have the ability to say no.
You don't. And it's crazy because you feel like on one hand, it's like you become the go-to person.
Of
right?
Course. Right.
Which makes you feel good. You feel recognized and you feel like,
needed.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, you feel, pancake flat, because there's some days when you're just like, oh man, I have given everything I've got and I've got nothing left.
Exactly.
And and so it took us a little while to get to a place where we were able to prioritize ourselves.
Yep.
But it took us a while to get there. No, tell me some success stories, because I know that in your work you've got some great success stories and some people you have worked with. So share one or two with us.
Yeah, I worked with a nurse, and with burnout specifically, I like to work with clients and give them like options. What in their life can they change? Because sometimes it can be drastic, and sometimes change doesn't have to be super drastic depending on people's lives. So I had a client, she was a nurse, this was during COVID, and her best option was quitting. And she found another job at an outpatient surgical center that she loved. Like, the atmosphere was better, the people were better, she could work the hours that she wanted, and it was great. And then we developed a plan for her anxiety, right? For regulating her nervous system. And then I had another client that I worked with, instead of quitting her job, she switched departments.
Really?
Because she had a really, really terrible boss in that particular department that was borderline abusive. And so she didn't want to leave the company. I was like, you don't have to leave the company, but is there another job within the company that you can do, that you can transfer departments? And maybe the department one will be easier in terms of work, but also will give you a better boss, a boss that will be more supportive for you. And she did, and she felt such relief. She said she was doing so much better in that new department. And then again, we developed a plan for the anxiety, right? She was able to work on the anxiety more because that external piece was taken care of in terms of being in a different department. So there's so many different options that we can do for people depending on what they're doing in their life.
Right. Wow. Well, I know I always like talking about change. Like, that's a big piece of what this show really is all about, is, it's being able to make changes and knowing that most change is going to start with you, you the individual, and being able to identify what changes can you make that will make the difference for you and to you and those who are around you. So no, I love that. So how do you approach coaching? Kind of thinking from that lens, when someone is feeling overwhelmed or they start addressing their anxiety and things, kind of what's your approach to coaching folks, just kind of thinking through that. I always like to know, what's your bedside manner, if that's a better way to ask the question.
Totally. Yeah. So we really start off with an audit, like what's going on in the client's life. Where does the client feel overwhelmed, stressed, right? Again, is it career, family, partner, finances, parenting? We want to get the whole picture. And then we really work on what are the options that we can use or take, right? And all of the options. Our nervous system loves options. And so what are those options? Which ones are realistic? What boundaries do we need to start putting into place, right? Like, do we need to quit a job? Do we need to move? Do we need to put boundaries in place in a job, in a relationship? Like, again, really creating this plan of what we can do to decrease the stress, right? And decrease the overwhelm. Yeah. And then really it's about nervous system regulation. So I love giving clients a variety of different tools that they can pick from. So it's
Yeah.
essentially creating their own formula of
Okay.
coping
Okay.
skills and techniques that will
Yeah.
regulate their nervous system over time. Because what works for me is going to be what is different than what works for you is going to be different than what works for another client. So really coming up with like a customized formula toolbox for
Yeah.
skills that they can use literally for the rest of their lives.
No, that's amazing. And I think that's great for people, but to know that you need a toolbox.
You
Like
do.
you probably need something that a little toolbox has got, a pair of pliers in there, a screwdriver, a hammer. You need some different things for different things that might be going on in your life.
Exactly.
Everything probably isn't useful for every situation. So, you need
Exactly.
some
And that's
different
how I
techniques.
yeah, that's how I teach it. Cause like one moment you're gonna need to do some deep breathing, another moment you're gonna need to take a walk, another moment you're gonna have to put your hand on your heart and just breathe, and in another moment you're gonna need something else. So really being able to like learn your body and what it needs in any given moment. So like that
Yeah.
moment to moment awareness.
Is there ever a moment when you've got two pillows in there and you need to pillow fight with somebody else? Is that something you can throw in the toolbox too?
Totally. Totally. Just don't hurt yourself or other people. But yes.
Ah, no, I love it. I love it. So, like, is there? Do you have like one daily habit that you
Mm.
believe that everybody could implement to maintain like a good mental well being?
The first thing that popped in my mind was meditation.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Simply because meditation changed my life. I don't know where I'd be without learning meditation. Like
yeah,
that was the thing that I learned in the clinic that as I spoke earlier about my journey, like they taught us meditation and the ability to just focus on your breath because breathing is the quickest, fastest way to calm down your nervous system. It is free. You don't have to pay for it. You breathe all the time. You just have
yeah,
to put your attention onto your breath. And then every time your mind goes somewhere else, which it will, because hello, monkey mind, we want to
yeah,
just bring the attention to what it feels like to breathe. And it's going
yeah,
to be hard at first. It took me a
mhm,
year and a half to meditate for 45 minutes
yeah,
of
yeah.
practice. But I'm telling you, like the effects of it over time, at least for me personally, have been astronomical.
Yeah. You know what? I think that is so helpful because a lot of times people think about meditation and they think their mind kind of goes new age and so they just kind of get to a place where they're like, "Oh, I can't even meditate because that's against my religion." And it's like, no,
That's
it's learning how to breathe and to focus your mind, like to be
right.
able to calm yourself, calm your nervous system. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of talk them through like what meditation is,
Yeah,
because I think sometimes people get it confused sometimes.
100%. I think a lot of people think that meditation is like, I have to sit there and not have thoughts and clear my mind. Good luck with that. Monks can't even do that. And they meditate for 8 hours a day every day. So that's not the point of meditation. The point of meditation, like you said, is to redirect your focus back onto your breath. So I like to explain it as you start off with 10 seconds and you focus on your breathing. Where do you feel it the most? In your nose, in your chest, or in your belly? And what does it feel like to breathe? Like the sensation of breathing, like the warm air and the cool air in your nose, for example, your chest or your belly expanding, right? And
Mhm.
then, so what you do is you focus on that. And then every time your brain goes, oh, what about the grocery list? It's like, come back to your breathing. Oh, what about what I have to do tomorrow? Come back to your breathing, right? Like, oh my gosh, something else, come back to your breathing. It's gonna feel like a game of ping pong, back and forth and back and forth. And it will, and it's gonna get annoying and it's gonna be frustrating until you can do it for longer periods of time. And then, I mean, I've been meditating for years. I can lay there and not think anymore. It's taken
And
me
that's a learned skill.
correct. It took me probably 6 or 7 years to get to that point
Yeah.
consistently, right?
Yeah.
And does it happen all the time? Absolutely not. There are still moments that I will be like, "Oh my gosh." And then I'll be like, "Oh, my toes tingling," or, "Oh, I have to do that. Oh, I forgot to do that." And then I just come back to my breath. And it's this compassionate practice of consistently redirecting yourself and then being able to be with whatever is going on in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's the practice, right? Of that compassionate, observing self that you become when you meditate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love the way you just explained that, because I think that people have lost or have not been able to understand meditation
Yeah.
in that way.
Yep.
They're, as a matter of fact, their mind probably does what it would do when it first when somebody first is learning how to meditate.
Correct.
It goes somewhere and it misses it. It's gone. It's all over the
I would be
place.
surprised if it didn't do that, because your mind is built to think. Like that's what your
What it
mind
does.
does. And so your job isn't to be like, oh, I can't believe I didn't, I didn't, my mind went somewhere again. It's like, of course it will, right? And then your job is to gently bring it back to your breath every time. And
Every
it's going to
time.
get annoying, and it's going to be okay.
It is. It absolutely is. No, Gabby, I love it. I love it. So you know what? One thing before we get out of here, because I swear the time goes by so quickly. I know it just goes by so quickly. So how can listeners connect with you and learn more about your coaching services?
Yes. Really, it's my website. So GabbyWenek.com. So GABBYWNEK coaching.com. Everything is on there. You can book a consultation call if you feel like this is the right fit for you. And then on there, if you scroll down to the bottom of my homepage, there's a free guide that you can get. So just click on it, put in your email, and I will give you a free guide for some tools and techniques for chronic stress and anxiety and burnout that you can start using today.
Awesome. And her website and everything is right inside of the show notes. So make sure that you grab them. Gabby, it has been great, but tell us this, because I never let anybody go. What are your top 3 tips for change makers? What are the top 3 things that you would tell somebody getting ready to make a change because they've experienced anxiety or burnout? What would be the top 3 things you tell them to do?
Know that support is out there. And if you are looking for support, you will find it. There is always someone that you can connect to, that you can work with, that you can find. Like, you don't have to do this alone. I think that sometimes we think that, and you don't. I promise that you are not the only one struggling with this. And I promise you can get to the other side, because I'm living proof that you can.
Yeah.
So that would be number 1. Number 2, one of my favorite quotes is, nothing changes if nothing changes. So you got to do something different in order to get a different result, right?
Absolutely. Our pastor says that all the time. If you want something different, you got to do something different.
Exactly. Right. And so, and also part of that is change is scary. And I want to recognize that for people. Like, your brain doesn't want to change, and it's worth it in the end. Right. And then the third thing would be, taking care of yourself. Like, how can you, like, again, hand on your heart, take care of yourself, even if it's in really, really small ways, right? Again, it could just be put your hand on your heart and take a couple deep breaths. Like, that could be how you start really that process, and knowing that nothing ever stays the same, ever. Things are always constantly changing, and you can get there with baby steps. The only way you won't get there is if you quit.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. GabbyWenekCoaching.com. You guys make sure you check her out. She's amazing. Gabby, this has been great.
Thank you so
much. Thank you so much for coming on. I so appreciate you. Hang around for us just a second. Guys, I know you have loved the show today, because I just look, my hand on my heart up here and up here. Oh, it feels so good. Gabby, this has been great. Oh, so everybody, you know what? If you are experiencing burnout, anxiety, it happens. It happens with a lot of us. Our lives are just full. They're busy. It's a lot going on. There's so many things that are happening around us, with us, to us, even to others that are a part of our lives. So a lot of times, it may not be happening to you directly, but it's impacting you directly because it's happening in your mind and with the things that you have going on. So reach out. Don't do it alone. Gabby is so right there. So coaching.com. Get her information in the show notes. Now, I told you guys, I told y'all it was going to be a good show today. And I am so glad that you tuned in. Make sure that you share this with someone you know who may be experiencing what we talked about. Share it with them, share it with others. And don't forget, every Friday we tune in with another good show. Love you guys. Appreciate you tuning in. I will see you back here next Friday. Until then, bless you, and I'll see you next time.